Oh, hi. Hello. What's up, you guys? Hey, Yu Hintan. Welcome back. Bigfoot. What's up, Bigfoot? Asian man. We got Asian man in the house. What's up, Gabriel? Cupie. Drift. Dee Dee. Glad you guys could join. Hey, Nikki. Welcome back. Streety McMeaty. What's up, Losh? How are you guys doing? How's your week been? Nice to see you guys. Hey, Katie. What's up, Hope? Oh, you got mochi today? You got a lot of you have so much mochi. You got azuki, sesame, and sakura mochi. Oh hey. Hi. Lol. Up Kunchun. Hey Patrick. Canary. What are we eating today? Oh, I have a special thing today that I'm eating. So today I ran out of Japanese snacks, so I went to Misua, which is a market, like a Japanese supermarket that's nearby, and I got some snacks, so I stocked up. All right. Look at what I have today. I gotta eat it fast. What is this? This is mochi ice cream. I gotta eat it fast because I can see it's already starting to melt. So it's mochi and then ice cream in the middle. Let's see how it tastes. Mmm. It's vanilla. And it's melting. Oh my god. Oh. Mm. 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 That was good. But it's cold. I have to finish the second one because it's melting. No. All right. Round two. Mm. It's really good, you guys. It is really good. Mm. Ah, I'm getting a mini brain freeze. That was good. I just down 3 gigantic mochis. Sorry, two. Two. I had to eat it fast because it just melted. So yeah, that was vanilla on the inside. To be honest, I couldn't taste the mochi. The vanilla ice cream just was too powerful. So I just tasted the vanilla. Still good. I mean, you did not know that you clicked on a mukbang. Yep. I tricked you with the thumbnail. This is just me eating the entire stream. Oh, good. You're getting brain freeze just by watching me eat. Yeah. It's good though. I like it. I have like It came in a package of 6, so I have 4 more. I'm not gonna finish that. I think 2 is enough for today. Yeah. Have you guys ever had a mochi ice cream? It's really good. Yeah. The only thing is you gotta eat it right outside of the fridge, or right outside of the freezer, because it melts really fast. Your teeth hurts from watching me. What will be my next vid? Well, that's a secret. I can't tell you. It's very much it's a state secret. If I tell you, I have to kill you. Yeah, I've been working with the editor, the video editor, and it's been going pretty well. Yeah, he's saving me a lot of time, so I can do other things. Just don't get mochi ice cream from Costco. I never did that before. Is that not good? I've gotten mochi from Costco before, and it's pretty good. This mochi ice cream I got from a Japanese supermarket. History of fox poop. Who is my editor? Well, you don't know. He's a dude. He's a guy in from London. Yeah. The mochi there is crumbly. Okay. What's up, Sir John Manuel? Good morning. Good morning to you too. Yeah, it's almost New Year's, almost Lunar New Year's. Lunar New Year's is on Friday. On Friday, are you guys doing anything? I don't know if I'm doing anything. I'm just going to my parents, I think. Yeah, nothing to do these days. Whole Foods has good mochi. Okay, I might try Whole Foods. What part of London? Why? Are you like going after my editor? Are you gonna find him? What are you gonna do with him? All I know is he's in London. Oh, he's in yeah. I guess he's in the UK. He might have moved away from London, I'm not sure. He's somewhere in there. He's somewhere in that part of the world. We will eat mooncakes. Yeah, that's a tradition for New Year's. Uh yeah, my dad's making well, my parents are making a bunch of traditional New Year foods. So that should be good. All right, let's go. Let's do a recap of what happened last week. Okay, for whatever chapter last week was. All right, last week, our hero Ling Hu Chong was with his granny slash 17, 18-year-old girl named Ying Ying, right? And then he fainted because he's super sick, and in the start of the last chapter, he woke up at the Shaolin Temple, right? And the monks there are helping him, helping with his fatal disease. And he wakes up, but he couldn't find Ying Ying, right? She's gone, right? We don't know what happened to her. And the abbot there of the Shaolin Temple offers to teach him some secret Shaolin Kung Fu, so that it will cure. Yeah, it's super powerful, I guess. So it'll cure his disease or his syndrome, whatever you call it, right? His problem with the energy streams inside his body, and yeah, so the abbot offers to teach him that to cure him, but the only condition is that he has to join the Shaolin school. Okay, so and then he's like, no, I can't. I'm already with the Huashan school, right? I can't join another school. and then that's where we learn that the master has kicked him out of the Huashan school. His master has kicked him out. He's no longer part of the Huashan school. His master is super disappointed in him, and then and he's informed all of the other members of the other Orthodox schools that my apprentice is has gone the wrong way, has taken the wrong path, the path to evil, and yeah, if you see him, you can kill him if you want to. Okay, so he's out of the school. He's super sad. He cries. So the abbot is like, oh, yeah, that's really bad. So do you want to join my school? And he's like, no, he doesn't want to join. Okay, he probably doesn't want to live anymore. He has nothing to live for, and yeah, so he doesn't join the Shaolin school, probably because it's very boring too. And he leaves. So he leaves, and then he finds this crowd around this old man in a white robe, and the old man has shackles on him, and it looks like the old man is a prisoner of some sort who has just escaped. Okay, and the crowd has fighters of the Orthodox and unorthodox side of the martial world, and they're all after him. Okay, they want to capture him or beat him up. And Ling Huchang sees this, and he sees that it's many against one, and he sees that it's unfair, right? It's unfair to fight many people against just one person, this one old man. And so he helps this old man, right? He helps the old man fend off their attacks, and they're actually doing pretty well. So the old man is super powerful, and looks like Ling Huchang, even without his inner energy, right? He has 0 inner energy at the moment. But his sword martial arts is so good that he's holding his own against all these fighters, all these high-level fighters. And that's it. That was where we left off the last time. How's that? It looks like such a nice day outside my window, I guess. Do you guys see? I don't know what kind of tree that is, but it has some pretty flowers on it. Yeah. Boop, boop, boop. All right, so let's begin, shall we? So they're in the fight now. All right, chapter 18, part 2, collaboration. Right after Ling Huchang had defeated the woman, a Taoist priest stepped out of the crowd of the Orthodox school members. I am afraid that the Huashan school probably doesn't have such bewitched sword art, he bawled out. From his attire, Ling Huchang could tell that he must have been a senior master in the Taishan school. He also figured that the Taoist priest must have loathed how Xiang Wenjian had injured his fellow apprentice and decided to step forward to get even. So Xiang Wenjian is the old man in the white robe. Although Ling Huchang had been expelled from the Huashan school by his master, having grown up in the Huashan school, he always remembered the motto, the 5 mountains, sword alliance, same root, different branches. So upon seeing this senior master from the Taishan school, naturally he reacted respectfully. Turning his long sword to point the sword tip downward, he cupped his hands in greetings. Ling Huchang dares not to offend Uncle Master of the Taishan school. The Taoist priest's name was Tian Yi, and it was in the same generation of apprenticeship with priest Tian Men and priest Tian Song. So he's pretty high up there. What kind of sword art did you use? What kind of sword art did you just use? He asked coldly. The sword art Ling Huchong just used was taught by a senior master of the Huashan school, Ling Huchong answered. Total nonsense. Priest Tian Yi let out a disgruntled snort. Where did you find a devil to teach you that? Watch out! As soon as the last word went out of his mouth, Priest Tian Yi thrust his sword directly at Ling Huchong's chest. The naked blade flashed, accompanied by a continuing buzzing sound. Just with this one thrust, the forces carried on the sword had already covered the Tanzhong, Shunzhang, Lingsu, Shenfen, Bulang, Yuman, and Tonggu, these 7 major acupoints on Ling Huchong's chest, and regardless of which way he dodged, the sword tip would always be able to penetrate one of the 7 acupoints. This sword move was named 7 Stars in the Vast Sky, and was the cream of the crop in the entire Taishan school sword art. Once the move had started, the only way to evade it was to leap back over a dozen feet instantly. Not only would it require the opponent to possess very advanced Qinggong skills, the opponent also needed to be fully aware of the potential power of this 7 Stars in the Vast Sky move and leap backward without any hesitation as soon as the move was executed, in order to escape the fatal injury from a chest penetration. And as soon as the opponent landed back onto his feet, he must be ready to parry the 3 swift and fierce consecutive moves that came immediately after. These 3 consecutive moves, each one more vicious than the previous one, and all interlinked, would be very difficult to cope with. Since Priest Tian Yi saw with his own eyes how excellent Ling Huchong's sword art skills were, he decided to use this move with his first thrust. Ever since the senior master of the Taishan school invented this sword move, it probably had never been used in the first round of fight before today. Astonished by the sudden attack, Ling Huchong suddenly had a brainwave and remembered seeing this move on the rock wall inside the cave on top of the cliff of contemplation. That day he actually studied this move so he could use it against Tianbo Guang. Even though he had failed to imitate it correctly and hadn't beat Tianbo Guang with the move, he had a clear understanding of the flow of this sword move. At the instant when the cold blade almost touched his body, having no spare time to think about it, he thrust his sword at Priest Tian Yi's lower abdomen at once. This thrust was none other than the thrust depicted in the drawing on the rock wall, the one created by the demon cult's elder to counter this move. At the first glance, it seemed that this thrust would allow the practitioner to end in common ruin together with his enemy. But in fact, this move, 7 Stars in the Vast Sky of the Taishan school, actually had 2 sections. In the first section of the force of the sword would recover the 7 vital acupoints on the enemy's chest. And while the enemy was scared out of his wits, the practitioner would use the techniques in the second section to penetrate one of the 7 acupoints he saw fit. Even though the force from the sword covered 7 acupoints, but to kill the enemy, 1 stab would do the job. Regardless of which acupoints the sword penetrated, the resulting victory would have been all the same, and that was why there would have been no need to penetrate all 7 acupoints, and it would have been impossible to penetrate all 7 acupoints at the same instant. One move containing 2 sections was actually the key of success for this sword move, but after the demon cult's elder deliberated it carefully many years back, he was able to find the flaw from within. As soon as the first section of the sword move was executed, if the opponent immediately thrust at the lower abdomen of the enemy, the move would have been broken, and the second section would never happen. As soon as Priest Tian Yi saw the profound counter move from Ling Huchong, he knew too well that he had no way of dodging it. Turning completely pale with fright, he screamed in fear, figuring that by then the longsword must have penetrated his abdomen. In the utmost panic, he could no longer feel any pain, and his brain also seemed to have ceased functioning. Convinced that he must have died already, he collapsed to the ground. At the time when his sword's tip was almost touching Priest Tian Yi's lower abdomen, Ling Huchong had stopped the thrust midway. Showed some mercy. Who would have thought that the Priest Tian Yi would be scared unconscious from the tremendous shock? Oh wait, he fainted. He actually fainted because he thought he died. Yeah, his memory is pretty good, huh? He just learned these moves in one day, and he remembers it right away when he sees them. Watching Priest Tian Yi collapsing to the ground, members of the Taishan school in the crowd were convinced that Ling Huchang must have seriously injured Tian Yi and immediately shouted loud curses. 5 young Taoist priests ran out of the crowd and charged at Ling Huchang. These 5 men were all apprentices of Priest Tian Yi. Consumed by blinding rage and the determination to avenge their master, they waved their 5 longswords about madly and swept toward Ling Huchang like a thunderstorm. Ling Huchang poked out with his longsword in quick succession, and the 5 Taoist priests each took a cut in his wrist. Loud clanking echoed when 5 longswords fell to the floor. Scared out of their wits, the 5 men leapt back when Priest Tan Yi tottered back to his feet, screaming at the top of his lung, "I am dead! I am dead!" The 5 apprentices were thunderstruck. They couldn't find any wound on their master's body, but hearing their master screaming again and again, they were not sure whether their master was dead already or still alive. After several loud screams, Priest Tan Yi's body gave a violent shake, and he collapsed to the ground again. 2 of his apprentices rushed by his side and propped him up, then retreated back to the crowd in sore straits. With only half a move, Ling Huchang had defeated Priest Tan Yi, an elite fighter of the Taishan school. The audience found themselves in complete shock. By then, the attackers around Xian Wenjian had changed. The 2 men wielding longswords were members of the Hengshan school. Their 2 swords rose and fell speedily, always looking for gaps in Xiang Wenjian's defense with the iron chain. Another man held a shield in his left hand and a knife in his right hand. He was someone from the demon cult. Using the shield to protect his body, the man fought with a ground-snuggling knife form. He would roll close to Xian Wenjian's feet and then attack his lower body from close to the ground. He's crawling on the ground. Twice, Xian Wenjian struck the man's shield heavily with his iron chain, which had no effect to the man under the shield. But the knife under the shield kept stretching out and drawing back, one vicious move after another. That seems like a turtle form. Like he has a shield on top and then he's poking his knife from under the shield like a turtle. So dramatic. He's like, "I am dead. Why are you saying you're dead?" With a shield to protect his body, this man's defense is very tight. But when he stretches his arm out to attack, that's when the weakness exposes. His opponent can then break his arm, Ling Huchang thought. "Hey buddy, do you want to die?" Suddenly a voice rose from behind his back. The voice was not particularly loud, but it was very close to him, probably only a foot or so from his ear. Astounded, Ling Huchang turned around and then found himself standing face to face next to a man, so close that their noses almost touched each other. Just when he was about to duck, the man had placed his 2 palms on Ling Huchang's chest. "If I strike with my inner energy, it will break all your ribs," the man said in a chilling voice. Ling Huchang knew the man was not exaggerating, and stood still, his heart almost stopped beating. The man gazed into Ling Huchang's eyes. Since the 2 of them were so close to each other, Ling Huchang couldn't see the man's face. All he could see were 2 sharp and shining eyes with a stern stare. "So, this is the man who will kill me," Ling Huchang thought, feeling much at ease now that the matter of his life would finally be settled once and for all. The man also noticed the mood change. At first, Ling Huchang's eyes were filled with terror, but only instant later it was already replaced by a look of unconcern and indifference. Facing death with assurance was something even masters with superior attainments in the martial world could rarely achieve. He couldn't help but feel respect spewing in his heart. "I subdued your vital acupoint only by a sneak attack. If I kill you like this, I am sure you'll refuse to take defeat," he said with a laugh before retreating his palms and taking 3 steps back. Now, Ling Huchang could finally take a good look at him. What he saw was a short, chubby man with a yellowish, fat face in his 50s. His two fat palms were both small and thick. With one palm up and one palm down, the man showed a stance of the Songyang palm. Senior Master of the Hengshang School, may I ask for your respectful name? Many thanks for showing mercy with your palm strike, Ling Huchang said with a smile. I am Yue Ho, the man replied. After a short pause, he spoke again. Your sword skills are outstanding indeed, but your combat experience is too little. How embarrassing. Great yin-yang palm, Uncle Master Yue, you are too fast for me, Ling Huchang said. Uncle Master, I don't really deserve that, Yue Ho replied. What happened to the kiss? Oh, they almost kissed. But yeah, too bad. Could have had a blossoming romance, but it didn't happen. Bringing his left hand upward, he threw a knife hand chop with his right hand. Though his appearance was ugly as soon as his move started, his entire body looked as solemn as a mountain, with imposing bearings, and became indescribably attractive. Ling Huchang could... Oh, attractive? Oh, maybe the romance is blossoming. Ling Huchang couldn't find a single flaw around his entire body. Excellent palm skills, Ling Huchang acclaimed, and swung his longsword upward. Because he couldn't find a single flaw in Yue Ho's palm form, and his movement, this thrusts of his, had both defense and offense. 90% of it was false, while only 10% of it was real. But in Yue Ho's eyes, this upward swing was brilliant. Regardless of which part of Ling Huchang's body he planned to strike, using his two palms, he would always end up sending the center of his palm toward the tip of the sword. So only halfway through the palm strikes with his two hands, he immediately retracted his palms and leapt backward. Excellent sword art, he shouted. Pardon me, Ling Huchang replied humbly. Watch out, Yue Ho yelled as he pushed out with both palms, and a strong gust of energy force blasted toward Ling Huchang. Oh no, Ling Huchang groaned inwardly. At the time, Yue Ho was at a good distance from him. When Yue struck out with his two palms remotely, he had no way of warding the attack off using his longsword. Just when the thought of jumping out of the way popped in his mind, a freezing sensation had shot up his entire body. He couldn't help but shiver. The palm strike from each of Yue Ho's hands had different attributes. One had the force of yin, while the other had the force of yang. The yang palm strike was launched earlier, yet the yin force reached the target first. Ling Huchang only had a fraction of a second to pull himself together when the burning hot energy force struck his body and shook his body violently, almost knocked the wind out of him. When one was struck with both the yin energy force and the yang energy force, normally he would have no chance of surviving. But in Ling Huchang's case, though he had lost all his inner energy, his body was filled with abundant inner energy, among which were the inner energy from the Peach Valley 6 fairies, also the energy from Monk No Commandment, and when he was in the Shaolin Temple, he also received a good amount of energy from Great Master Feng Sheng. Any one of those energy streams was vigorous enough, not mentioning he had many of them inside him. When the two energy forces, one yin and one yang, struck his body, the inner energy streams inside him naturally reacted by creating energy shields around his internal organs and his vital channels, preventing any injuries. But the strike still gave a tremendous shake to his entire body, and he felt indescribable suffering. Afraid that Yue Ho would strike him again with energy forces, he dashed out of the pavilion and thrust his sword out rapidly. Succeeded with his remote palm strikes, Yue Ho figured that his opponent would at least drop down with severe injuries, if not drop dead. He had not expected to see Ling Huchang getting off without a scratch. Then immediately after, many reflections from the sword tip flashed, all aiming at the center of his palms. Astounded, he crisscrossed his palms and struck out, one striking toward Ling Huchang's face, the other one striking toward Ling Huchang's lower abdomen. Just when he was about to release the energy forces for the strikes, he suddenly felt a violent pain. His one palm on the back of the other, both had been stringed together by the blade of Ling Huchang's longsword. Oh. It was unclear whether Ling Huchang had penetrated his two palms consecutively or he had struck his palms to the tip of the sword himself, and all he could see was that his left palm was in front, his right palm was behind, and the exposing blade behind the back of his right palm was as long as 5 inches. So he pierced the guy's 2 palms together. If Ling Huchang took advantage of the situation and pushed his sword forward, the sword tip would instantly penetrate Yue Ho's chest. But with consideration of how Yue had showed him mercy with the palm strike earlier, he held his sword still after the blade penetrated Yue's 2 palms. Yue Ho let out a loud cry, pulled his palms off the blade, and leapt backward. "Sorry," Ling Huchang called out, feeling very regretful. "5 inches? The chat is very inappropriate today, it seems." The move he had just used was one of the techniques in the palm-breaking stance of the Dugu 9 swords. Ever since Feng Qingyang went into seclusion, this move had never emerged in the entire martial world. Suddenly, loud cracking sounds exploded from behind Ling Huchang. He turned his head and looked over his shoulder, and saw 7 or 8 men attacking Xian Wenxian all together. 2 men in the group had very fierce palm power, and the forces from their strikes had broken the pillar and the girder of the pavilion. Rafters and tiles started falling off the roof, one after another, but the fighters were so involved in the fight. Even when tiles fell on their heads, none paid any attention. Within the brief moments when Ling Huchang looked back over his shoulder, Yue Ho had charged at him and struck out with a palm strike. Oh, his palms, he has 2 holes, or he has holes in his palm, and he's still striking out with them. The force from the palm strike hit Ling Huchang squarely on his chest and sent him flying in the air, his longsword also falling out of his grip. Before his back even landed back on the ground, 7 or 8 men had dashed toward him, raising their weapons high in the air and striking down toward him altogether. "Hey, you cherry pickers!" Ling Huchang grinned. Suddenly, he felt something tightening around his waist. An iron chain had just flown by, wrapped around his body, and pulled hard, and in the next moment he was already flying in the midair, as though he had the magical power of mounting the clouds and riding the mist. It was none other than the master hand of the demon cult, Xian Wenxian, who had just saved his life. Having been chased around and beleaguered by both the demon cults and the orthodox schools, Xian Wenxian had been on the brink of exhaustion. Then, all of a sudden, a fear-for-nothing young man stepped out of nowhere to defend him against injustice. Naturally, he had a high opinion of the young man. After watching how Ling Huchang had fought with his opponent, Xian Wenxian had made out that the young man had extraordinary sword art skills, yet had terrible inner strength. And with so many tough enemies attacking him all together, he was really in an extremely dangerous state. Therefore, while contending with his own enemies, he never ceased paying attention to Ling Huchang's condition. When he saw Ling Huchang being knocked into the air, he swung his iron chain at him right away and began scurrying, pulling Ling Huchang behind him. Ling Huchang is Jesus? I see. Why is he Jesus? Once Xian Wenxian began running using his qinggong, it was as though he had turned into a galloping horse, and within only seconds he was already scores of feet away. Dozens of people chased behind him, and many shouted out loudly, "Xian Wenxian escaped! Xian Wenxian escaped!" Xian Wenxian was exasperated. Turning around all of a sudden, he charged a few steps back. The men chasing him were taken completely by surprise and paused their steps at once. One of them had slightly weaker qinggong skills. Not able to stop his running so abruptly, like everybody else, he ran directly into Xian Wenxian's left foot, flying kick, and flew right back at the chasing crowd. Turning around once again, Xian Wenxian resumed running, and the crowd behind him also resumed their chase. By now, none of the followers was bold enough to dash at full speed, and the distance between Xian Wentian and them furthered gradually. This old man was never acquainted with me, yet was ready to die for me. Friends like this are too hard to come by. But those bastards simply would not leave me alone. How can I get rid of them? Xian Wentian thought to himself without slowing down with his running. After a moment of running, he suddenly remembered a place and felt very pleased. That place would just be perfect. But another thought immediately popped out. That place is far from here. I wonder if I have enough strength to run over there. No worries. If I run out of strength, those bastards would only run out of strength before I do. He looked up at the sun and make out the directions. He looked up at the sun to make out the directions, and then crossed the wheat field in a diagonal line and headed straight toward the northeast corner. After running another 5 miles or so, he had returned to the main road. Suddenly, 3 galloping horses dashed past them, narrowly missing them. God damn it! Xian Wenxian cursed. He suddenly took in a long breath and accelerated until he was right behind the last horse. Leaping into the midair, he kicked the rider off the horse with a swift flying kick. Well, that's not nice. And then landed on the horse himself. After placing Ling Huchang across the saddle in front of him, he swung his iron chain in a sweeping motion and knocked the 2 riders off their horsebacks. The strike broke the 2 riders' many bones, and evidently they would not survive it. Judging from their attires, all 3 riders were common people. None had anything to do with the martial world. It was very unfortunate that they happened to bump into Xian Wenxian, the Malefic, at the nick of time, and lost their lives for no reason. The 2 horses kept galloping forward, even though their riders had fallen off. Xian Wenxian shot the iron chain out and cut the reins. He was able to utilize the iron chain free at will, as though it was an extra long arm of his. Witnessing his indiscriminate killing of innocent people, Ling Huchang couldn't help but groan inwardly. Okay, so this Wen Tian guy is not necessarily a good dude, because he just killed these people for no reason, just because he wanted their horses. Having seized 3 horses, Xiang Wenxian found himself in high spirits. He looked up at the sky and burst into loud laughter. Little brother, those bastards wouldn't be able to keep up with us now, he exclaimed. Not for today, but what about tomorrow? Ling Wuchang let out a slight smile. God damn it, the hell with them. I'll whack them one by one, Xian Wenxian cursed. Riding the 3 horses in turns, Xian Wenxian speeded down the main road for a good while and then turned into a mountain road. The mountain road became steeper and steeper. Eventually, it was too steep for the horses to climb. Are you hungry? Xiang Wenxian asked. Ling Huchang nodded. Do you have any food? He asked. Nope, but we have horse blood, Xiang Wenxian answered. He dismounted his horse and clawed the neck of the horse with his right hand, instantly creating a big hole in it, and thick streams of blood gushed out at once. Moving his mouth next to it, Xiang Wenxian swallowed several gulps of horse blood. This guy is an interesting dude. Was that necessary? I mean, first you kill the horses, first you kill their riders, now you kill the horses too. Your turn, he said. Ling Huchang was in shock, completely astonished by the unusual scene. If we don't drink horse blood, how do we gain our strength for more fights? Xiang Wenxian said again. More fights? Ling Huchang muttered. Are you afraid? Xiang Wenxian asked. Ling Huchang's heroic spirit soared at once. He let out a few laughs and then replied, What do you think? Moving his mouth next to the horse neck, he felt the horse blood gushing toward his throat. Without hesitation, he swallowed it down. At first, the horse blood tasted a strong, fishy smell, but after several mouthfuls of it, it no longer smelled that bad. Ling Huchang drank over a dozen mouthfuls of horse blood, one after another. and did not move his mouth away until he felt completely full in his stomach. Xiang Wenxian followed suit and drank more blood. Before long, the horse could no longer hold out and collapsed in long, painful neighs. Raising his left foot, Xiang Wenxian booted the horse into the ravine. This guy is a bit wild. A bit unorthodox guy. Ling Huchong gasped with astonishment. The horse, a large beast, weighed at least 500 pounds. He almost couldn't believe his eyes when he watched Xian Wenxian booting it into the ravine with such a casual kick. After booting the second horse into the ravine, Xian Wenxian turned around and threw a knife hand chop at the third horse, which chopped one of the hind legs off the horse. Who is he? Like, is he the mountain from Game of Thrones? Poor horses, all three of them. In the same way, he chopped another hind leg off. The horse neighed deafeningly, even after it was booted into the ravine by Xian Wenxian's kick. The painful neighs continued on. "This leg is yours. If you eat it slowly, there should be enough for 10 days' worth," Xian Wenxian said. By then, Ling Huchong finally came to the realization that Xian Wenxian had only chopped the hind legs off for food, and wasn't being brutal simply for the fun of it. So he took a horse leg in compliance, and once Xiang Wenxian began climbing the mountain path with a horse leg in his hand, he followed quickly. No, he followed behind quietly. Oh, bell tolls for the horse? Poor horsies. They didn't deserve that. They did not deserve that at all. Xiang Wenxian slowed down his paces and walked unhurriedly. Because Ling Huchong had lost all his internal strength, only half a mile into the walk, he was already falling far behind, wheezing uncontrollably, his face turning completely pale, and Xiang Wenxian had to stop and to wait for him. After another mile or so, Ling Huchong couldn't walk any further and had to sit down to catch his breath. "Little brother, you are certainly very unusual. Your inner strength is so terrible, however, after taking 2 hits from Yue Ho's that scumbag's great yin-yang palm strikes, you look as though nothing had happened to you. This is really beyond me," Xiang Wenxian remarked. "What makes you think nothing happened to me? My internal organs have all turned upside down from the shockwave, and who knows how many dozens of internal injuries it must have inflicted upon me. You know, I was just wondering about this thing myself. How come I am still not dead yet? Maybe I'll be collapsing down any second now, and not ever be able to get up again," Ling Huchong replied with a wry grin. "Well, let's rest a bit longer then," Xiang Wenxian said. At first, Ling Huchong had wanted to explain to Xiang Wenxian that there was really no need to wait for him any longer and let the enemies catch up with Xian Wenxian, since he wasn't going to live long anyway, but then thought better of it. Xian Wenxian was a heroic man. He would never have abandoned him so he could flee for his own life. If he had said something along that line, he would have really insulted Xian Wenxian. "Little brother, how did you lose your internal strength?" Xiang Wenxian sat down on a big rock and asked. "Well, this is a very funny story." Ling Huchong let out a light grin and began explaining in short how he had been injured, how the Peach Valley 6 fairies injected their energy into his body in an attempt to heal him, and how Monk No Commandment injected more inner energy into his body later. "I've never heard of anything weirder than this one." Xiang Wenxian broke into a loud laugh, and his thunderous laughter echoed around the valley. Suddenly, sound of loud bowling rose from a distance amongst Xiang Wenxian's loud laughter. "Xiang Wenxian, you can't run away. You'd better behave yourself and surrender now." But Xiang Wenxian kept laughing out loud. "Funny, very funny. The Peach Valley 6 fairies and the Monk No Commandments are all first-class idiots," he exclaimed. After another 3 laughs, he knitted his brows and scolded. "God damn it. Large crowd of bastards have caught up with us." He reached out and picked Ling Huchong up into his arms. Having no spare hand to carry the horse leg, he left it by the side of the road and began running. Once he picked up speed, Ling Huchong felt as though he was flying above the cloud, and soon after, Ling Huchong suddenly found himself inside a vast expanse of whiteness. He had actually run into a large cloud of mist. Wonderful, Ling Huchong thought to himself. We've climbed onto a peak, so now those several hundred people can't charge forward altogether. As long as they fight us one-on-one, this Mr. Xiang and I for sure can deal with it. The shouting behind them came closer and closer. Apparently the people right behind them were also masters in Qinggong, even though their Qinggong skills were inferior to that of Xian Wenxian's. Carrying a man in his arms, Xian Wenxian unavoidably slowed down after running for an extensive period of time. After reaching a turning corner of the road, Xiang Wenxian placed Ling Huchong on the ground and whispered, "Be quiet." Both of them stood quietly, pressing their backs against the precipice wall. Only a moment later, sounds of footsteps rose as someone closed in. The men in pursuit dashed at full speed. In the thick mist, neither of them saw Xian Wenxian or Ling Huchong. Only after they had run past the side of them did they notice the two of them, and before they had a chance to stop and turn around, Xiang Wenxian had struck out with his two palms. The palm strike was both resolute and accurate. The two men fell into the ravine without even a groan, and a short while later, two muffled flops came as their bodies hit the bottom of the ravine. Why didn't these two scream when they were falling? Ling Huchong asked himself. Oh, I see. Before they fell down, the force from the palm strike had killed them instantly. Those two scumbags love to swagger around, calling themselves the Gansang School Duo Swordsmen, forces of sword towering the heaven. Now they can rot in the abyss, their stinks towering the heaven. Ha 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 ha. Xiang Huanshan sneered. Ling Huchong had heard the fame of the Diansang School Duo Swordsmen mentioned to him before. He heard that the two men had excellent sword skills and had slain many formidable outlaws. Little had he expected to see them die so muddle-headed here today, and didn't even get a chance to see their faces. There are still about 5 miles from here to Xianchou Gorge. Once we get to the gorge, we won't have to worry about those scumbags anymore. Picking Ling Huchong up once again. Oh wait, that was Xiang Wencan talking. He resumed running with faster and faster paces, but sounds of footsteps rose from behind as several more people began catching up with them. At the time, the mountain path turned eastward and no longer had the cliff by the side. Xian Wenxian couldn't play the same old trick again by hiding next to the precipice wall for sneak attacks and could only keep running with all his strength. A swishing sound suddenly broke out as a projectile flew towards Xian Wenxian's back. It sounded loud and strong. Apparently, the projectile was something very heavy. Xian Wenxian put Ling Huchong on the ground and turned around, catching the projectile in the air. Mr. He, when did you decide to get involved with this? Has this got anything to do with you? He cursed. You have become the bane of the martial world, and everyone has the very right to kill you. Now take this flying awl from me. A voice shouted from within the mist, followed by continuous swishing sounds. He had said this flying awl, but at least 7 or 8 flying awls had been shot forward. Hearing the loud and shrill sounds made by the projectiles tearing through the air, Ling Huchong was deeply concerned. Even though the sword techniques taught by Grand Uncle Master Feng can be used to block any projectiles or missiles, the forces carried by the awls are simply too strong. I can hit them, but the tremendous force would break the sword for sure, he thought to himself. Let's take a break, guys. Okay, 5-minute break. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So our hero is like getting into all kinds of trouble, huh? He's just off on an adventure with this dude he just met. We don't even know if the dude is a good guy or a bad guy. Yeah, he just killed these commoners, just riding on their horses for no reason, right? So we don't know if maybe he's a really evil dude, but yeah. More snacks? I don't know. Maybe I should just have one snack per day. Yeah, to just to stretch them out, right? You don't want me to get all unhealthy. Well, I do have wine. Maybe I can just pour a glass of wine for myself. Mm. Yeah. Cheers. What kind of wine? It's the same one that I had last time. It's a Sauvignon from Napa. Yeah. Nothing expensive. It's cheap wine. It tastes the same as the expensive kind. Do I only like reading Japanese stories or Chinese ones? I'll read anything. Yeah, I'll read whatever you want. This can't be copyrighted. So I need permission from the whatever work that I use that I read. I need permission from the author, or it needs to be not copyrighted. You think he's just trying to survive, the old man? Maybe. I feel like he didn't have to kill those people on horseback. He could have just like knocked them off the horse, or just said, "Hey, please, can I have your horse?" And then just grab the horses. You didn't have to kill those guys. I love reading dirty stories. Okay, that's for the premium content. I'll read dirty stories for you. All right. Where were we? He cast. Oh, this guy was throwing awls at him. He cast a glance at Xian Wentian, who was now squatting in a horse stance, his upper body leaning forward slightly, his face looking nervous, very different from the unconcerned face he had had when he was still in the pavilion, surrounded by hundreds of enemies. Okay, so it looks like this guy that's they're fighting now is a powerful dude. When the flying awls reached Xian Wentian, they silenced one after another. Ling Huchong figured that they must have all been caught by Xian Wentian. All of a sudden, many swishing sounds broke out all together as numerous awls that were shot out at once. Ling Huchong knew that this was a projectile throwing technique named raindrops all over the sky. Normally, when someone shot projectiles using this technique, the projectile he used must have been small ones, such as coin darts or iron lotus seeds. Judging from the loud sounds made by the flying awls, each one had to be at least half a pound, if not a full pound. How could dozens of them be shot out at once? After hearing the loud and shrill sounds, he took a prone spontaneously. What does that mean? After hearing the loud and shrill sounds, he took a prone spontaneously, and then he heard a loud ouch from Xian Wenxian, as though he had been wounded severely. In great astonishment, he leapt forward and hid Xian Wenxian behind his back. He took a prone. I think it means like he fell prone, like fell on the ground. Oh, you think A? So it means it's not, he took a prone. He took prone. That still doesn't make sense. Maybe it means like he fell prone. That makes sense. Mr. Xiang, are you wounded? He asked hurriedly. I won't make it. You'd better run for yourself, Xiang Wenxian replied in fits and starts. We live and die together. Ling Huchong won't abandon you just to save my own life, Ling Huchong replied loudly. Xiang Wenxian has been hit by the flying awls, the chasing enemies shouted out loudly and dimly. Over a dozen shadows closed in upon them little by little. Suddenly, Ling Huchong felt a strong gust blowing past him by his right side. Then came Xian Wenxian's loud laughter as the dozens of shadows in front collapsed to the ground. Turned out that Xian Wenxian caught the dozens of flying awls all into his hands, but pretended to get hit. Then, when the enemies were off guard, he shot the many flying awls back, also using the raindrops all over the sky technique. Because they were in a heavy mist and no one could see clearly, besides, Ling Huchong's worried voice was completely sincere, so every one of the chasing enemies believed it wholeheartedly. In addition, no one had expected that Xian Wenxian was also capable of shooting out such heavy projectiles using the raindrops all over the sky technique. So none of the dozens or so people at the front were able to dodge the attack, resulting in several dead corpses and severe injuries for the rest of them. What are awls? Awls are it's a tool. It's like kind of like a needle, but thicker, that you use to make holes into things, like holes into like sheet metal, or leather. Let's look it up. Yeah, these things. So these things, apparently they're heavy, and the dude was throwing them as projectiles. Xiang Wenxian picked up Ling Huchong and turned around to run once again. Very good, little brother. You are a good brother, he praised, thinking to himself that when Ling Huchong had stepped forward to defend him recklessly, it could be accounted to the eccentric temper of a young man. But when he pretended to be wounded severely a moment ago, Ling Huchong would not run for his own life and was determined to live or die together with him. That was indeed the most precious virtue in the martial world. Code of brotherhood. After a short while, once again, the enemies gained on them bit by bit. Swooshing sounds resumed continuously as projectiles, darts were pelted toward them non-stop. Because Xian Wenxian had to keep bending over or jumping up and down to dodge them, the enemies were able to quickly shorten the distance. Putting Ling Huchong down on the ground, Xian Wenxian suddenly dashed into the chasing crowd with a loud roar. Several loud clanking sounds exploded, and Xian Wenxian quickly returned, not just by himself, but also with a man on his back. After tying the man's hands with his iron chain and carrying him on his back, Xian Wenxian placed Ling Huchong back in his arms and resumed running. We've got ourselves a live shield, he grinned. Stop shooting projectiles! Stop shooting projectiles! The man screamed loudly, but the chasing enemies ignored his plea and kept shooting projectiles and darts forward. Ouch! The man suddenly groaned loudly as a projectile hit him on the back. With both the live shield on his back and Ling Huchong in his arms, Xian Wenxian kept running with good agility, while the man on his back cursed loudly. Wang Song Gu! Damn you, you son of a gun! You know it's me! Ouch! It's a sleeve arrow! God damn it! Zhang Furong, you bitch! You are just getting back on me, aren't you? After some continuous popping sound, the man's cursing voice went lower and lower gradually, and eventually fell silent. Oops, our live shield is a dead shield now. Xiang Wenxian grinned. Without any scruples for projectiles, Xiang Wenxian ran as fast as he could, and after turning two mountain ridges, he finally said, We are here. Letting out a long breath, he broke into loud laughter, his mind completely free from any worries. The last 5 miles of running was extremely dangerous. He really had no confidence that he would be able to shake off the chasing enemies. Ling Huchong scanned the surroundings widely and felt a slight surprise. A narrow stone beam lay in front of his eyes, leading into a bottomless abyss. The stone beam only had a visible part of 8 or 9 feet long. Anything further was completely concealed in thick mist. He couldn't tell how long the stone beam was and where it led to. It's an iron chain in the mist. Don't step onto it carelessly, Xiang Wenxian whispered. Got it, Ling Huchong answered, his heart thumping rapidly. This stone beam's width is no wider than a foot, with a bottomless abyss right below it. This is already extremely dangerous. With an iron chain in the place of the stone beam, it is impossible for me to cross it with my current kung fu, he thought inwardly. Xian Wenxian untied the iron chain around the hands of the dead shield, and then drew a long sword by the man's waist and handed it over to Ling Huchong. Placing the shield in front of himself, he waited for the enemies silently. Within a few minutes, the first block of enemies had arrived. Among them were both members of the demon cult and members of the orthodox schools. Seeing the precipitous terrain and Xian Wenxian's fighting with one's back to the river stance, none of them was bold enough to charge forward. After a while, more and more enemies arrived, gathering at about 50 or 60 feet away from Ling Huchong and Xian Wenxian. They shouted their curses for a while and began shooting all kinds of projectiles, darts, migratory locust rocks, sleeve arrows, and so on and so on. Xian Wenxian and Ling Huchong hid behind the shield, and none of the projectiles could reach them. Suddenly, a thunderous roar blasted as a boorish mendicant monk charged forward, leaving booming echoes reverberating in the deep valley. The mendicant monk smacked over his over 70-pound iron Buddhist staff toward Xiang Wenxian's waist. Xiang Wenxian bent forward and swung his iron horizontally, barely above the ground, simultaneously. I think it means his iron chain. By the time the Buddhist staff passed by from above his head, his iron chain also swept toward the mendicant monk's right ankle. The monk had put great strength into the smack and could not draw the staff back in time to block the iron chain. Having no other choice, he leapt upward to dodge it. But Xian Wenxian's iron chain suddenly turned around, wrapped around the mendicant monk's right ankle, and swung upward, following the monk's upward momentum using his own force against him. The monk lost his balance at the landing and tottered forward, only finding himself falling toward the bottomless abyss. With a snap of his wrist, Xiang Wenxian unwrapped his iron chain from the monk's ankle. Miserable screams echoed as the mendicant monk fell down and continued all the way down into the abyss, which made the hairs on the back of everybody's neck standing on their ends as they took several steps back spontaneously. The deadlock lasted for a good while, until two men finally stepped forward. One had a pair of halberds, and the other one was a monk, holding a crescent spade in his hands. The two men launched their attack shoulder to shoulder. The two halberds, one on the top and the other one below it, struck towards Xian Wenxian's face and lower abdomen, while the crescent spade struck forward, aiming at his left rib cage. All three weapons were the heavy type, and with resourceful inner energy attached to them, they appeared to be super powerful. The two men had the land form in their minds when they launched the attack. so that Xian Wenxian could not be able to dodge to the side and would have no choice but to block the attack with his iron chain in a contest of strength. Sure enough, Xian Wenxian waved his iron chain and with 3 loud bangs knocked the 2 halberds and the crescent spade back. Sparkles flew in all directions from all 4 weapons, proving that this round of fight was sheer strength against sheer strength, and there was no room for any trickery. Loud cheers exploded in the audiences at once. After their weapons were knocked aside by the iron chain, the 2 men launched another wave of attack. 3 loud bangs exploded again as the 4 weapons collided with each other. Both the monk and the man wobbled a few times from the collision of the forces, but Xian Wenxian stood firmly, and before his enemies even had a chance to take a breather, Xian Wenxian roared in a deafening voice, striking out his iron chain rapidly. In a hurry, the 2 men each raised his weapon to block. 3 deafening bangs broke out once again, short and quick. The monk snarled loudly and threw his crescent spade to the side, when all of a sudden blood spurted out from his mouth. The other man raised his 2 halberds and stabbed them toward Xian Wenxian. Instead of blocking the approaching halberds, Xian Wenxian squared his shoulders and laughed out loud. When the tips of the halberds were still half a foot from Xian Wenxian's chest, he suddenly sank weakly, and following the fall of the halberds, the man also fell forward to the ground and became motionless. Turned out that he had been shaken to death by Xian Wenxian's overwhelming strength. The many people gathered in front of the gorge stared at each other in terror, and none had the courage to step up. So this guy is super powerful. Little brother, we'll just drag it on with them. Why don't you sit down and have a rest? Xian Wenxian suggested. At that word, he sat down himself, embracing his own knees into his arms and casting not a glance toward the crowd. Audacious devil, how dare you belittle all the worldly heroes like that? Someone suddenly spoke loudly. Naked blades in their hands, 4 Taoist priests stepped out from the crowd and walked in front of Xian Wenxian, all 4 swords turning crosswise in unison. Get up! Let's fight! They yelled. What did Xian Wenxian do to have provoked your Ame school? Xian Wenxian said coldly with a sneer. Evil demons and heretics are misfortunes of the martial world. We Taoist priests believe in cultivation of moral character and promotion of righteousness. Eradicating the wicked and destroying the evil is our duty, a Taoist priest on the left stated. Eradicating the wicked and destroying the evil is your duty indeed. Look at the people behind you. Half of them are members of the demon cult. Why aren't you eradicating the wicked and destroying the evil? Xian Wenxian mocked with a grin. The principal culprit first, the Taoist priest answered. But Xian Wenxian remained in his sitting position, his knees in his arms. Oh, I see. Very well, he said as he held up his head and stared at the floating clouds indifferently. Suddenly, Xian Wenxian leapt up in a loud roar and swung his iron chain, which swept toward the 4 men's waist speedily like a mounting dragon. This surprise attack came so abruptly and would have worked if the 4 Taoist priests weren't top-notch fighters of the Ame school. Hastily, the 3 Taoist priests planted their long swords downward in front of their waists, while the 4th Taoist priest on the rightmost thrust his sword directly at Xian Wenxian's throat. Clank! The 3 long swords bent all together from the iron chain's heavy strike, while Xian Wenxian inclined his head and avoided the stab from the 4th sword. Waving his sword about swiftly, the 4th Taoist priest immediately followed with 3 incessant sword attacks, which stalled Xian Wenxian just long enough while the rest of the 3 Taoist priests retreated back and rejoined the battle after replacing their long swords. The sword moves from the 4 Taoist priests coordinated with each other as though they had put up a small sword formation. 4 swords fluttered gracefully in the air, gathering in 1 second, then dividing in the next. Ling Huchong watched the fight for a little while and soon realized that Xian Wenjian had to move both of his hands together every time when he waved the iron chain about, which was far slower compared to the agility he would have achieved had he been able to move his hands freely. And as the fight dragged on longer, a defeat would be simply inevitable. Taking a step forward from Xian Wenjian's right side, he thrust his sword out, aiming toward a Taoist priest's ribs. The direction and position of the thrust was most peculiar. The Taoist priest had no way of evading it, and with a slight bump, he took a hit on the side of his body. At that exact instant, a thought flashed by Ling Huchong's mind like a lightning. I've heard that people of the Aimei school has always preserved their moral integrity with an extremely fine reputation, paying no attention to other people's business in the martial world. I'll help Mr. Qiang out of the predicament, but I shall not kill the Taoist priest. So, as soon as the tip of his sword pierced the Taoist priest's skin, Ling Huchong pulled his sword back at once. But because of this hard pull out of a sudden impulse, the sword move became deficient, and to his surprise, the Taoist priest brought his elbow inward in an attempt to hold the longsword under his arms with force in spite of the great pain. Ling Huchong gave the sword a tug, and the blade of the sword instantly left a long cut on the man's arm and the side of his body. But because of this slight holdup, another Taoist priest's long sword had already struck over and smacked onto Ling Huchong's sword. Ling Huchong felt his entire arm going numb and almost let go of the sword. But knowing that without his sword he would have become a disabled person, he held onto the sword handle desperately as waves of force reached him through the long sword and crushed toward his heart channel in multiple bursts. When the first Taoist priest took a stab under his arms, the injury had not been very serious. But then, when he brought his elbow inward to hold the longsword with his arms, Ling Huchong's tug created a cut so deep that even his bones were exposed. Blood spurted out from the wound, which basically forced him out of the fight. The rest of the 2 Taoist priests were both behind Ling Huchong's back by now, fighting a fierce battle with Xian Wenjian. The 2 Taoist priests had fine and marvelous sword moves, and the 2 swords worked in coordination, putting up an extremely tight defense shield. In every few moves, Xiang Wenjian would take a step backward. Thus, after 10 steps or so, his entire body was already inside the white mist. But the 2 Taoist priests kept charging forward, and soon the front half of their longswords also disappeared into the heavy mists. "Watch out! It's the Iron Chain Bridge down there!" someone in the crowd suddenly shouted out. But it was too late. The 2 Taoist priests screeched in terror as both of them plunged forward into the white mist, obviously being pulled forward involuntarily by Xian Wenjian. Sound of screams sank rapidly into the valley and fell silent only seconds later. Laughing out loudly, Xian Wenjian emerged out from behind the white mist, but his laughter halted abruptly when he caught sight of a tottering Ling Huchong. Back at the pavilion, the 4 Taoist priests of the Aimei school had witnessed how Ling Huchong injured his opponents one after another with the Dugu 9 swords, and knew very well that they would be no match for him in a contest of sword arts. But they were also able to tell that Ling Huchong's inner strength was plain ordinary. Now, when the Taoist priest shot his inner strength toward Ling Huchong wave after wave, even if Ling Huchong were still in the same state of health before he was injured, his cultivation of inner strength would have been very shallow, after all, due to the limited amount of training, and would have stood no chance against the Taoist priest's over 30 years worth of inner strength cultivation using the breathing techniques of the Aimei school, much less that Ling Huchong had lost all his inner strength. Fortunately, he had abundant other people's energy inside him, which enabled him to withstand the energy attack for a little while and protected him from an instant injury. However, he still felt the energy streams inside him rolling and clashing against each other over and over as golden sparks twinkled in front of his eyes. Suddenly, he felt a stream of hot energy penetrating his back through the Da Jue point, and the stress coming from his hand lightened at once. Ling Huchang's spirit surged. He knew that Xiang Wenjian must have lent him a helping hand. Then he immediately realized that Xiang Wenjian had redirected the attacking energy force downward so it would flow from his arm to his waist, then to his heels, and eventually dissolving into the ground. The Taoist priest felt the sudden dissolution of his attacking energy force. He let out a loud yell and leapt backward, withdrawing his own sword. "It's the evil art of essence absorbing! It's the evil art of essence absorbing!" he cried out loud. At the mention of the phrase, many in the crowd changed their countenances. "That's right. It's the magical art of essence absorbing. Now who else is interested to try it out?" Xiang Wenjian said with a broad grin. Could that run have come out again?" The demon cult elder with a yellow waistband muttered in a croaked voice. "Let's report back to the chief and let him decide," he ordered. The demon cult members acknowledged the command in chorus, and all turned around to leave. After a short moment, half of the crowd of several hundred people had dispersed away. The rest of the people of the Orthodox schools talked amongst themselves in whisper for a little while, and then also began to disperse, one after another. In the end, only a dozen or so people remained. "Xiang Wenjian, Ling Huchang, by using the evil art of essence absorbing, you have sunk beyond redemption. Hereafter, when fellow members of the martial world cope with the two of you, we no longer restrict ourselves to only just means. You have only yourselves to blame for such a consequence. I hope you won't regret today when that happens," a clear voice declared. "When did I ever regret for what I did? Are you saying that it is actually a just means for the several hundreds of you to jointly attack the two of us? How funny is that?" Xiang Wenjian replied in laughter. Sounds of footsteps rose, and soon the remaining dozens or so people also vanished from sight. Xiang Wenjian inclined the head and listened carefully. When he was sure that the enemies had indeed walked away, he whispered to Ling Huchang. "I bet you these bastards will come back in no time. Come here and get on my back." Seeing the solemn expression on Xiang Wenjian's face, Ling Huchang decided to simply comply without asking any questions, and climbed onto Xiang Wenjian's back. To his slight astonishment, Xiang Wenjian bent down, extended his left foot forward slowly, and began walking down the deep valley. Xiang Wenjian swung his iron chain out and wrapped the end of it around a tree bough by the edge of the cliff that protruded beyond the cliff. After verifying that the bough was strong enough to hold the combined weight for both of them, he jumped down gently, and the two of them were now hanging in the mid-air. Xiang Wenjian swung back and forth a few times. As soon as he found a spot to set his feet, he snapped his wrist with a reverse swing, which unwrapped the iron chain from the bough. After pressing down on the mountain wall with his hands to stabilize himself for a brief second, Xiang Wenjian immediately swung out the chain again, and this time it wrapped around a protruding rock underneath them. Thus they were able to descend another 10 feet. Using the same technique, he descended further and further down the deep valley. Sometimes, when there was only bare mountain wall without any trees or protruding rocks, Xiang Wenjian would then run the risk by keeping his body close to the mountain wall and simply slide downward. Each slide would run about 100 feet. As the slide accelerated, as soon as Xiang Wenjian saw a spot that could be used to leverage the slide, he would use his outstanding kung fu skills, sometimes striking down with his palms, sometimes stomping with his feet to slow down the slide. This was certainly a very stunning experience for Ling Huchang. The danger and risk of sliding down the cliff was really no less than the danger and risk in the fierce battle a moment ago. So apparently he's going down this straight cliff wall. This story would be a lot faster if he spent his time learning how to fly instead of fighting. Yeah, flying would be very useful right about now. If he had not met if he had not met an eccentric like Xian Wen Xian, it probably would never happen in 100 incarnations. So when Xian Wen Xian's feet touched the bottom of the valley in the end, he was actually slightly disappointed and wished that the valley were another 1,000 feet deeper. He looked up at the top of the valley. The stone beam looked like a thin, blurry shadow, and white clouds concealed everything else. Mr. Xiang, Ling Huchong said, but Xian Wen Xian reached his hand down quickly and covered Ling Huchong's mouth while pointing his right index finger upwards. Ling Huchong understood at once. The enemies must have returned, but when he looked up as far as he could, he didn't see any shadow on the stone beam. Xian Wen Xian drew his arm back. Placing his ear next to the mountain wall, he listened attentively. After quite a while, he finally said with a grin, God damn it. Some are taking guards, while some others are searching all over the place. Turning toward Ling Huchong, he goggled at him for a moment, and then spoke again. You are an apprentice of a famous Orthodox school. I, on the other hand, am a so-called evil heretic. Yet the two sides have always been mortal enemies. Why were you willing to offend your friends at the Orthodox schools and come to save my life with no regard for your own safety? I just happened to be at the place at the nick of time, and were able to join forces with you, Mr. Xiang, and contended with the many elite fighters of both the Orthodox schools and the Neiman cult. I had not expected to come through this alive. I must have had incredible luck on my side. What you said about me saving your life is really, well, is really, Ling Huchong replied. Is really rubbish, isn't it? Xiang Wenxian finished the sentence for him. I dare not say Mr. Xiang is talking rubbish, but it would be completely incorrect if you say that I saved your life, Ling Huchong answered. Xiang Wenxiang never goes back on his own words. I said that you saved my life, then you did save my life, Xiang Wenxiang concluded. Ling Huchong let out a smile and did not argue. Just now, those goddamn bastards kept yelling about the magical art of essence absorbing and were scared out of their wits. Do you know what kind of kung fu this magical art of essence absorbing is? And why are they so afraid of it? Xiang Wenxiang asked. Ling Huchong, a junior, is just about to ask for your advice, Mr. Xiang, Ling Huchong replied. Drop the junior, senior, elder, Mr. Crap, will you? That's really getting on my nerves. You can simply call me Brother Xiang, and I'll call you Brother Ling Hu, Xiang Wenxiang said with a frown. Ling Huchong dared not to do so. Ling Huchong declined. I see. You despise me because I am part of the demon cult. You've saved my life, but my life is the least concern on my mind. If you despise me, we can dispute this over a fight, Xian Wenxian exclaimed angrily. Though he spoke these words in a muffled voice, the anger blazing on his face clearly showed his irritation. There's no need for a fight. If Brother Xiang insists, of course I'll comply, Ling Huchong replied with a beam. He thought to himself, didn't I make friends with the evil rapist, Xian Boguang? Might as well add Xian Wenxian to my list of friends. This man was free and easy and holds the characteristics of a true man. I've always liked people with such demeanors. At that thought, he bowed down and saluted Xian Wenxian, saying, Brother Xian, I salute you. Xian Wenxian's face split into a wide smile. Just bear in mind that you are the only sworn brother Xian Wenxian ever had in the entire world, he added. I am extremely flattered, Ling Huchong grinned. According to the tradition in the martial world, when two men become sworn brothers, they should at least get on their knees, pinch some soil in front of them in place of the incense sticks, and then swear an oath along the line of sticking together through thick and thin, and sharing weal and woe. But since both of them were the unconventional type, and after going through this fierce battle together, each found the other congenial, with the utmost sincerity. Neither bothered about the over-elaborate formalities. Once they called each other a sworn brother, then sworn brothers they were. Jiang Wenjian was a member of the demon cult, but there were very few fellow cult members he would think much of. Having made Ling Huchang his sworn brother, he found himself in a state of bliss. Oh, so now they're more than friends. They are sworn brothers. And they barely know each other. Well, I guess once you fight like 200 people together, then you know each other pretty well. Too bad we don't have any wine here, or else we could have drunk 20 or 30 bowls of goddamned liquor to celebrate, Jian Wenjian grumbled. Absolutely, Ling Huchang immediately agreed. My throat had been itching madly from the cravings. Now that you mention it, it only got worse. Those bastards haven't left yet. I guess we'll just have to hold out for a few days at the bottom of the valley, Xian Wenjian suggested, pointing his finger upward. Brother, just now when that cow nose of the Amei school attacked you with his inner energy, what happened to the cow nose's inner energy force when I helped you with my inner strength? He asked. Brother Xiang, I felt as though you redirected that Taoist priest's inner energy force into the ground, Ling Huchang answered. Yes, yes, Xiang Wenjiang smacked his own thigh in excitement. Brother, your comprehension is excellent. This kung fu of mine was something I created by chance, and nobody else in the martial world knew about it. I gave it a name and called it the minor art of the energy absorbing into the ground. That's a strange name, Ling Huchang uttered. Well, Xian Wenjian explained, that's because the magical art of essence absorbing can change the countenance on anyone's face in the martial world just by the sound of it, and this kung fu of mine would pale into utter insignificance in comparison with it. That's why I had to call it a minor art. So this magical art of essence absorbing sounds like something really powerful that everyone is scared of, and they think this guy has it, has that martial arts, but he actually doesn't. But I guess using this his minor arts thing, it makes the opponents feel like this guy has that magical art of essence absorbing. This kung fu of mine only utilizes simple techniques to graft one twig on another and redirects the opponent's attacking inner force to the ground instead of causing any harm. I don't have the least gain from it myself. Besides, this kung fu is only useful when the opponent is attacking with his inner energy and can't be used to attack in offense. At the time when the opponent suddenly felt that his inner energy was discharging in a steady stream, undoubtedly he would turn pale with fright, but it doesn't take long for that amount of inner energy to regenerate. Why was I so sure that they would definitely return? Because as soon as the cow nose found out that he didn't really lose any bit of his essence, he would know that my minor art of energy absorbing to the ground is only bluffing, and there's nothing dreadful about it. I never liked playing deceiving tricks. That's why I never used it before. So this magical art of essence absorbing is apparently a martial arts that absorbs your opponent's energy into yourself, right? Yeah. But this guy's kung fu is like it redirects your energy into the ground. So it seems like your energy is being sucked, right? And that's why they're so scared. He's gonna suck up all of my energy, and they ran away. But apparently he doesn't, right? It's just redirecting it and they get it back. Xian Wenxian never deceives people, but for his sworn brothers' sake, he made an exception today. Ling Hucheng grinned. Nah, I wouldn't say that. I never deceive people. But for insignificant players like that priest Song Wen, your brother, I would really disdain to deceive him. Xian Wenxian showed a grin before continuing. If I want to deceive someone for some reason, it has to be something huge, something earth-shaking, something everybody will be talking about afterwards. At those words, the two of them broke into laughter, even though they held their laughters low as so as not to be heard by the enemy above. But the laugh was thoroughly delighted. Done. Another chapter under my belt. How did you guys like that? Oh, that's true. They used to refer those Taoist priests as bull nose, and now it's cow nose. Ling Hucheng regaining his strength is a foregone conclusion, isn't it? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he'll never regain his strength. You were watching this video about the history of the toilet, and this video popped up. Yeah, sorry. I hope you liked the toilet video. I liked making it. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, hey, you guys did not catch me on any word that I don't know the definition of today. Usually you catch like one or two. But I fooled you today because there were some words that I didn't know. But no one brought it up. The toilet video was nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, there was some animation that the editor put in that I liked at the beginning and like in the middle. Yeah. Oh, they changed the translator, you think? Oh, maybe. I think you're right. I think multiple people translated this. So, yeah. In the previous chapters, they called them bull nose. They call that's an insult for Taoist priests was bull nose, and now it's cow nose. When will I do a new yokai vid? Pretty soon. Pretty soon, maybe. I don't know. I have some in the works. I have some yokai vids in the works. My editor is talented. Oh, thank you. Yeah. We only worked together recently. I found him like a couple weeks ago. So we only worked together on 2 videos before, but I like it. Yeah, it should. Yeah, hopefully the quality gets even better as time goes on. Usually I make it obvious that I don't know the word. Yeah, this time I wasn't obvious. This time I was very sneaky. I was very sneaky. I just read normally the words that I don't know and pretend that I know them. A yokai watch video? All the yokai that yokai watch is based on. The grammar seemed worse in this one. Yeah, I think you're right. There were some sentences that I had to read over. I had to read a couple of times. And no, yeah, you can't. It's over. It's done. You can't suggest words now. The reading is over. Okay, don't cheat. Malefic. What does malefic mean? Okay. Well, this doesn't count, by the way. But a malefic means it means like bad, right? It means bad. I'm pretty sure because of the prefix mal. Malefic. Causing or capable of causing harm or destruction, especially by supernatural means. I was kind of close, I guess. You asked for that at the time? Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. You got okay. Well, everyone needs to repeat it so that I actually see it. Yeah, sometimes I miss things. I'm sorry. Do you guys know of this feature of Google Google Dictionary or whatever this is? All right, I bet you didn't know.
Malefic. Malefic.
So it tells you how to say it, right? It tells you how to say the word. But you can also click on this button. Right? This is weird. I don't know if this helps anyone.
Malefic.
Oh. Well, that's wrong.
Malefic.
Wait a minute. Hold on, let me choose another one. Maleficent. Alright, so.
Maleficent. Maleficent.
But look at this. She can also say it in the British pronunciation.
Maleficent.
I think this is so funny.
Maleficent.
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 Maleficent. There you go. So, if you ever want to pronounce it like a British person, just ask Google Translate or Google Dictionary. The word prone means you're lying on the ground, like lying on the ground prone. Lying on the ground, not moving. I know because of FPS games. Yeah, lying flat, especially face downward.
Prone.
Let's see how you say it in British English.
Prone.
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 Prone. He was lying on the ground prone. Oh, helpful for animators? You think so?
Prone.
I guess. Prone.
Prone.
Prone. How does her mouth change?
Prone.
Prone. Between the British and American.
Prone. Prone.
Doesn't change at all.
Prone.
This is a scam.
Prone.
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 Prone. Prone. Anyways. Anyways, there you go. I taught you guys something. Prawn versus prawn. 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 How do you say prawn? Prawn.
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 Oh, that's a big prawn. Anyways, hi you guys. Thanks for joining. That's all for today. I love you, and I'll see you